What do women really want in a man? Which attraction cues matter the most? And what should you as a man be focused on to increase your desirability to women? Whenever these questions are asked, a discussion about female hypergamy likely isn't far behind in the conversation. The basic concept of female hypergamy is simply this: that women will tend to be more attracted to, and more likely to mate with, men of a higher economic status than themselves. In other words, men who earn more than they do. No matter how you spin it, the hypergamy conversation is an important part of the attraction conversation for men. But despite the increasing popularity of the term, and the fact that more and more content is being published about it in certain circles of the internet on a nearly daily basis, this is especially true in the manosphere. It has come to my attention that very few publishers delve deeply enough into the science behind it to uncover the truth about what it actually means for men. Personally, in my life, I've experienced first-hand evidence of the fact that female hypergamy is indeed a real phenomenon that drives female mating behavior. To me, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to examine my life and recognize that my economic status, as measured at any specific given point in time, strongly correlated both my perceived attraction on the dating marketplace and my overall success with women. But it's also obvious that economic status isn't the only factor. So in this vid, you're going to learn the truth about female hypergamy, not just from the man's perspective, but also from the scientific perspective. You're also going to learn how you can use this knowledge to help you increase your own dating marketplace value, attract higher value women, and just in general have a better dating experience and more overall dating success. Let's pull back the veil and uncover the truth. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the term hypergamy technically means marriage into an equal or higher caste or social group. Nowadays, the term is usually used to define the observed, evolved behavioral tendency for heterosexual female humans to be attracted to, mate with, and marry men of higher economic standing. Does hypergamy actually exist? The interesting thing about human female economic hypergamy is that a lot of people deny that it exists, for a few different reasons. Here are the two primary arguments that people in everyday conversation often cite in an attempt to disprove it. Argument number one: it's not a gendered behavior. Some people say that both men and women are hypergamous in their own ways. Therefore, to claim that it's an evolved, inborn, female behavior, is erroneous and only serves to falsely paint women as gold diggers. Argument number two: it's caused by the gender pay gap. Some also say that hypergamy isn't necessarily an evolved female trait, but that women have been forced into the behavior as a result of economic inequality. In other words, proponents of this particular criticism believe that women don't marry up because that's what they find attractive, but because for a long time, that was the only tool available to increase their social standing and achieve a greater chance for survivability, safety, and security for themselves and their offspring. This criticism basically says that what many people call hypergamy is actually just societal social conditioning, intended to keep women from replacing men as the dominant earners in relationships. As such, it's incorrect to label it as a legitimate inborn female mating behavior. But this also plays into the notion of income inequality, the notion that women simply earn less than men due to the gender pay gap, which perpetuates the income inequality in relationships and keeps women from being able to out-earn men. The argument goes like this: if women make significantly less than men, then they don't really have a choice but to mate with men who earn more. Dispelling the myth that hypergamy is a myth. We also want to help men have better experiences with women. And in order to do that, it's imperative for men to understand the truth about female mating behavior. There's actually a lot of evidence to suggest that economic hypergamy is an evolved, inborn female mating behavior, and that it still persists in the world today, despite the gender revolution and the massive strides that have been made in gender equality over the course of the last 200 years. So let's dispel these two arguments first. Dispelling argument number one: hypergamy actually isn't a gendered behavior. The thing about female economic hypergamy is that it specifies that women will be attracted to men of higher economic status. And yet, when people hear the term hypergamy used in a normal conversation, they'll generally respond with some kind of criticism that sounds like this: well, men and women try to marry up. It's not gendered behavior to want a partner who earns great money. It's just common sense. But according to science, this isn't necessarily true. Do men have hypergamy? The fact of the matter is that men are not hypergamous. In fact, what actually happens is that women tend to marry up, in terms of economic status, while men tend to marry down, making men effectively economically hypogamous. What is the opposite of hypergamy? The opposite of hypergamy is called hypogamy. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, hypogamy is defined as marriage into a lower case, class, or social group. Despite the fact that women are outperforming men in the Western world in terms of education, which has created a scenario where educational hypogamy is becoming increasingly common for women, women still tend to marry men who earn more than they do. This was covered in pretty thorough detail in a study authored by Yu Qian, titled Gender Asymmetry in Educational and Income Assortative Marriage. Now, there is absolutely an argument to be made for the fact that men tend to select partners who are younger than they are, and select partners who are more attractive than they are. But these are not economically hypergamous traits. These are gender-specific traits that men have evolved to look for in women, both for fertility reasons and for status reasons. Mating with women who are young and beautiful not only gives men a higher probability of successful procreation, but also supplies them with young, beautiful, arm candy that raises their social status and makes them look like a higher status man as a result. In a survey of 800 personal advertisements placed in newspapers and magazines, American women sought partners who offered financial security twice as frequently as men did. Many female doctors, lawyers, and very wealthy women are interested in men with even more money and status than themselves. In fact, women everywhere in the world are more attracted to partners with education, ambition, wealth, respect, status, and position, the kinds of assets their prehistoric predecessors needed in a parenting partner. As scientists sum this up, men look for sex objects and women look for success objects. Dispelling argument number 2: hypergamy isn't a result of the gender wage gap. Once again, I refer to Yu Qian's study above to dispel this myth. If this were the case, then you would expect women who earn more, who have higher educational levels, to break free from the norm of consistently choosing mates who out-earn them to choose whatever types of mates they actually desire. And yet, educated women persist in choosing to marry men who out-earn them, despite the fact that those high-earning men are more likely to be less educated. This was further explored in a study by Margarita Chudnovskaya and Ridi Kashyap, titled Is the End of Educational Hypergamy the End of Status Hypergamy? Evidence from Sweden. In this study, the authors observe that results for differences in disposable income reveal that for all educational pairings, men tend to out-earn women. They also observed that the wage gap didn't account for this. However, men out-earn women in all union types, and our simulation suggests that the gender wage gap cannot be seen as the explanation for this inequality. Hypergamy and dating. It's obvious that female economic hypergamy has a drastic effect on female mating behavior and how women perceive men's attractiveness on the dating marketplace. But exactly how does hypergamy affect the dating process for men? There are a few answers to this question. Let's break them down. Parental investment theory is basically a theory that evolutionary psychologists use to predict how men and women will utilize different mating strategies and behave differently on the dating marketplace. The theory goes like this. The sex that's responsible for the greatest physiological investment in offspring, females in the human species, will tend to be more choosy when it comes to selecting a sex partner. Why? Because mating errors are costly, and they'll tend to be exponentially more costly to the sex saddled with the greatest physiological investment requirements in the event that sex results in pregnancy and childbirth. This fits into the hypergamy discussion because it would explain one reason for why women would want to select men of higher economic status. In successfully implementing a hypergamous mating strategy, women would offset their greater childbearing risk and investment by procuring a partner with greater economic wealth, to help provide stability, safety, and security for herself and her offspring. The mate switching hypothesis. The mate switching hypothesis, written by a collection of well-known authors in the scientific community, attempts to explain why women sometimes choose to switch mates and have affairs. On its own, it's a profoundly interesting theory that deals with a lot of different topics related to how women track mate value, compare it to their own value, and make determinations for when to mate switch, and how to go about the process with as little blowback as possible. But there's overlap here in our discussion about hypergamy that simply can't be ignored. First off, let's look at a few quotes from the hypothesis. In this first quote, we learn that women track their partner's mate value, and may use this information to choose to disinvest from a relationship. Evidence suggests that women indeed continue to track their partner's mate value across the relationship and use this information to invest or disinvest from relationships. We also learn that a lack of economic support is consistently cited as a reason for women to divorce men. For example, cross-cultural evidence indicates that inadequate economic support from the husband is a consistently cited reason for divorce. We also learn that the more a man earns, the more likely it is that his female partner will attempt to retain him as a mate. Furthermore, the magnitude of women's mate retention effort positively correlates with her partner's income and status striving. And finally, the parts of the hypothesis that are relevant to the hypergamy discussion are all really summarized in this quote. Stated differently, women continue to attend to a partner's resource provisioning trajectory compared to alternatives, and may attend to or explore alternative mate possibilities when the current mate compares unfavorably. The hypothesis also points out that women, but pointedly not men, prioritize economic resources among opposite-sex friends, who may serve as backup mates, if the current mate doesn't prove favorable. What does this mean for men? To put it simply, men need to understand three vital and pertinent truths about how hypergamy may impact their success on the dating marketplace. Hypergamy is real and persistent, even in our modern age. It exists for a reason: to facilitate greater survivability for women and their offspring. Men who increase their economic status and earning potential will also increase a key attraction metric, and thus, women will be more likely to select them as mates. One thing that's important to understand is that women command more natural value than men on the dating marketplace. Women are overall choosier than men when it comes to mating opportunities, and so, they're generally less likely to be impressed by, or attracted to, men who occupy a social standing lower than their own status. Specifically speaking, women will always tend to be more attracted to men who have a greater potential for generating resources, who are also willing to share those resources. You will notice that women are always trying to mate up, while men are tending to mate across and down. Therefore, you really don't want to be a man at the bottom of the status hierarchy. These men have virtually zero access to women. Elite men at the top of the status hierarchy, on the other hand, actually gain the ultimate advantage on the marketplace. High-value men with high earning potential are actually the rarest commodity on the marketplace. And so, even the most attractive women will compete fiercely for these men. That's where all men want to be, in the alpha spot at the top of the social hierarchy, where they're spoiled for choice, and gain the ability to virtually handpick whatever caliber of women they desire for themselves. Money isn't the only factor. It's also important to keep in mind that a man's resource holdings, money in the bank, aren't the only variable that engages female hypergamy. A man's ability to generate resources is another key part of the equation. There are a lot of traits that aren't directly related to his bank account that fit into this attraction metric. For example, men who are intelligent, industrious, motivated, ambitious, forward-thinking, hard workers, entrepreneurial, will also tend to engage female attraction on the basis of hypergamy, because even if these men don't necessarily have cash in the bank, they're still displaying attributes that are likely to indicate that they'll generate and possess ample resources someday in the future. This is called resource potential, and women are pretty good at picking up on it. Age also plays into this. The younger a man is, the more willing women will be to overlook a small bank account in lieu of attributes that may signal that he'll be a high earner in the future. But as men get older, women grow less likely to overlook a small resource pool. If you're 20 years old with zero money, but have a lot of motivation to earn money, that may be sufficient to make you attractive to higher value women. But if you're 40 or 50, the game significantly changes. You're going to need to have some cash in the bank, or women will start to think that you're all talk, no